Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and just came off the road in a Rocky Mountain High, being able to see my next guest in an amalgamation known as Circles Around the Sun. But he's been doing it on the bandstand for about the last, maybe 4 decades or so, and he continues to inspire. He continues to increase musical vocabulary on the bandstand, and the thing I love most about this cat is just the ability to play, bar after bar, bar after bar after bar after bar, and really never repeating himself and wanking it up there. It's really much harder to do than, let's face it, there's a lot of wanking, and this cat does not wank. Adam MacDougall, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hello.
Nice to hear you, man.
Nice to hear you.
What's the... Can you talk a little bit about, I hear a lot of people carping. I mean, they huge Chris Robinson Brotherhood fans, but they say, why are they playing Lancaster, Pennsylvania on a Tuesday night? Why are they playing 250-something shows a year? Why don't they cut the shows down and save the wear and tear, because the road can eat you alive, and make more dough? And I just want you to talk about that concept, how it helps the band, how it helps the songs grow, and just from your point of view, why do you guys play so many shows a year?
Well, it always helps the band to play, and it helps each individual to come up with new stuff every night and surprise oneself, hopefully. And also, if we play on a Tuesday or Wednesday, we are trying to make the money so we can pay for the hotels. I mean, the shows you want are Friday, Saturdays, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but you got to keep working to pay for the bus and the hotels and all the other stuff that goes with it.
Do you, was that, I mean, is it fair to say that you were part of the conception of the Chris Robinson Brotherhood?
Yeah, Chris and I talked about doing a side project when I was playing with the Crows, and we spent a lot of time in the back lounge listening to music and figuring out the differences we want to have between what the Crows are and have been and what this Chris Robinson Brotherhood thing was going to be, to make it different enough to be viable and not just be the same. So there was a lot of listening to records and figuring out what kind of a keyboard rig it should be, and some keyboards to stay away from and some keyboards to gravitate towards too, that kind of thing.
I mean, can you be a little more specific about what you're talking about? A sound, really more of a sound concept, and what keyboards were you using with the Crows, and which ones did you decide to bring in to CRB?
With the Crows, it was a lot of Hammond D3 and piano and some Wurlitzer. And we had decided to go more in sort of a Herbie Hancock Headhunters type of way, where we bring in more clavinet, lose the B3 for a while, lose piano for a while, so it's a different sound. Lean more on the Rhodes and the Mini Moog synth, or Moog synth. And we eventually ended up bringing the piano back in, but we still don't have any organ really to speak of. So it's more electronic, a little more synthy and more funky with clavinet, and just kind of went towards funk.
Yeah, definitely. There's a funk element to that. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who it is, but I do want you to pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
Be very good at it. and move on. There was a guy I worked with out here in L.A., and I did some gigs with him. Really talented guy. And I'm not going to mention any names, but he was doing some gigs, and he was calling me to play live with him. And I said, you know what? I said to him, look, I've seen him play, and I know he's great, and we did some sessions together. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do it, but if we do it, let's just not do these solos where you blow, you play the head, and then you just start soloing for literally, and I'm not exaggerating, 15, 20 minutes on one instrument, just one instrument.
Yeah, that's.
It's just what. So we did the gig. He goes, yeah, man, that sounds great. We did the gig, and I really talked to him about it. We rehearsed a little bit, and at rehearsals, he cut the solos. We got on stage. I swear to God, I was yelling, stop, move on, in the middle of tunes, and he never paid attention. And I never wanted to work with him again, and I told him afterwards, I said, this isn't fun for me. This isn't what I want to do. I don't want to go see a guy slamming cymbals and throwing sticks at the kit for 20 minutes on one song, just trying to make noise, which is what I felt like I was doing. We were repeating phrases. We were going back and playing the same thing over again. It was redundant, which is what this conversation is like. It wasn't the musical conversation I wanted to have. But when guys go out there, if he went out there and he played for a minute or two on his instrument and moved on, we could have done 10 songs and had a great time, and it would have been great.
That was the great drummer. I'm not sure if you had a chance to play with him or hang with him, but it's Rick Marotta.
And I don't. I've never played with him. I've never met him, but I know who he is.
Yeah. So he's talking about, you heard the story, and I was thinking this morning on the way over here. I said I want to talk to Adam because what I just saw from Cats, you just can play. I guess it's a question of how was there a point in your early career where you were just playing and going on and on and on and on, and then if so, how did you learn to craft a solo with a beginning and a middle and an end to the point now where you can literally go for 5 or 6 minutes playing all the different keyboards with Cats like I just saw you, and there's no repeating themes or ideas or anything like that?
Well, my mother was my mother is 82, and so she came from the jazz era, so there was a lot of jazz around the house, and the idea of experimental, free-form stuff was early in me. And then I heard Funkadelic, and I used to go see Parliament and Funkadelic in New York when I was a kid. And they would play for 5 hours. And people would be on the ground, laying on the ground by the end of the show. It's just a thing. And I think you just have to relax and pick your themes, and pick a theme and build on it slowly, and not, feeling so you have to put everything into 30 seconds of a solo is definitely a skill, and it's something I've had to do. But where I came from, it was about making people dance, and you don't really necessarily always have to have such an intense solo. You don't have to go from 0 to 60 in a minute. You can take breaks, and as long as the pocket's there and the groove is good, then your job, at least I feel like our job in Cats, is just to have a place where people can dance and hang out with their friends and pay attention if you want to. Don't pay attention if you don't want to. You can hang out with people, you can get a drink, you can be involved or not, but you're there. And at any given moment, it should be something you can dance to if you feel like it. And our job is to draw that out over long periods of time. So I think it's just inspiration, whatever hits you at the moment. Usually I'll just play something that tickles me. I don't really think about it too much. You just play something that's, you hear something you played and realize there's a theme there, and then you can slowly build on it. And it's really about taking those breaks to reassess your situation. Every little while you just stop and go, what am I doing? Is it working? Is it not working? Can I change paths? Do something, and you have the time and the space with cats to do that. And that's kind of our job, is to try and, hit 15-minute marks and 20-minute marks and keep the room moving.
Can you talk a little bit about Parliament Funk? I mean, I interviewed George Clinton, and without having seen them live, I mean, their records, there's 7, 10-minute tracks on their records, but, I mean, you're telling me that they were able to be completely unique they played for 5 hours?
I have seen them play at the Palladium in New York for 4 to 5 hours, yeah. When it was still, Bernie would sit in and Bootsy would be there and Jerome Braley would be on drums. It was, Eddie Hazel was still going for a bit. I got the tail end of Eddie Hazel.
You got the tail end? So you got the original, like some of the Hazel, the original cats.
Yeah, and I've even seen Billy Bass play in some other gigs, not those gigs, but other gigs around town in New York. So there was a real huge funk scene going on in New York in the early 90s, late 80s. And I was around. So, yeah, I've seen him play really long shows.
I'd be remiss if I didn't. I mean, Bernie Worrell was, major inspiration for you. And what did you learn mostly from him in a live setting about, just sort of, I guess, the idea of calming down, pacing yourself, but also just adding so many colors and increasing the sonic palette of it.
Yeah, I feel like he was a real master of that, of not having that kind of, get to your top speed too soon, which is an important thing, because once you're at your top speed, there's not much you can do except barrel through. So I would see him, make these little themes, and he's based heavily in classical stuff, so he would come up with these really unique lines on the either the mini moog or the string synth stuff, and he would take little moments where he'd kind of get a theme going and get it to a point and then back off, and then start somewhere else and work. And it wasn't a and it finishes at the high point and everyone cheers and you're done. That's I've had to do that before, and I've done it, and I've played in projects that's the point, and it's a lot of fun too. I'm not putting that in any regard down, but if you're playing a long time, you do have to reassess and stop and look at what you're doing and try something new and see how that works, and then you can get a lot out of that. So that was a big lesson for me from him, and especially with cats, that's what we do. If you're planning on doing a 6-minute, solo or 6-minute focus on you piece, then have to take breaks. You can't. It's like a conversation. You can't just yell at somebody for 6 minutes.
No, I mean, you just segue. You told me your mom, you said she came up in the jazz era, but I assume you mean that's when it was popular music.
Yeah, her music was from the 50s and stuff, so it was she wasn't part of the rock and roll generation, so most of the records, we had some soul stuff, but a lot of it was jazz.
Did you, that's my, like, how, the Bill Evans stuff, for instance, stuff with Scotty LaFaro and Paul Motion, I mean, that to me is the ultimate, just you just said conversation. It's about having a conversation. You just don't want to be yelling at somebody or yelling at the crowd for 10 minutes. And when did that conversation start for Adam MacDougall in a band? I mean, I connected with this cat, Bridget Moynihan, and she said that she was in a band with you called Marmalade. This is going back.
Yes.
LaGuardia.
Yeah, that was my very first band from when I was about 15 or 16 until probably 19 or something. Yeah.
Can we? Where were you now? Was the conversation? Where were you at? Was the conversation already? Was that something that was important to you, or were you learning how to improvise at that time? Where was MacDougall at that point?
Learning how to improvise, learning how to play with other people, being in a band where you have this camaraderie that I didn't come up with a very big family, so bands were always my family. And from that band, I still have many friends that I still talk to and see. And it was I was very young, and I went from trying to be a jazzer, which I'm not, and went as soon as I heard Bernie Worrell and Funkadelic, I went, oh, there's another side of things, for better or for worse. I mean, it made me stop trying to hit the marks of a professional jazz musician, which means I never really got as proficient as I would like to be. But it did open my head to the fact that you can mash different types of music together. It opened my head to different keyboard sounds and stuff that I thought I really liked. And then at that time, I went out and found those keyboards and started collecting them and stuff. But yeah, being in a band was the important thing. I love bands. I still do. I'm a sucker for them. As much as it's, basically being in a relationship with multiple other people, which can be tricky, but it's still what I love. I love people's voices and people's personalities and how it translates on stage and how it works off stage, and just having a crew, Everyone wants their crew.
Well, no, I mean, I totally dig it. I mean, you're spending most of your time with these guys off the bandstand, so it's important that you get along. I mean, do you get called into situations? A great piano player, Don Randy, told me, this guy was part of the Wrecking Crew, basically, and nowadays he gets called in and he'll bring in his keyboard, or they'll have a keyboard set up and he'll plug in, he'll play his piece, he'll overdub it, and they'll say, great, thanks, that's great, thanks, go home, we're done. And there's an anonymity to the studio scene. I have no doubt that if you were born 20 years prior, you would have been like Michael Omardian, or maybe like, Craig Durgee, nice. Or these cats. I'm serious, like jack of all trades, like called in and like spending, like going in like before the sun came up and leaving when the sun went down, and, playing the studio scene was kind of not as cooking as it was, before. But how do you feel about the idea of just, do you get calls to go in and do those overdubs? And, what does that feel like, knowing that you are horny to play with bands?
I did. When I moved to L.A., there was a time that I was focused a bit more on staying at home and playing sessions, and I did a bunch of that. But once you get a good road gig with a good band, and that would have been when Chris asked me to join the crew. I mean, I've been touring with other bands too, but I was spending a lot of time at home. Once I started working with Chris, we toured so much that it kind of falls off at home. People, producers and such, they still have your name, and they call you. You're in Minnesota or Idaho, and you can't make the session. So right. Eventually, it kind of falls off, and they say, as much as we love your playing, we found other people that we like in our Rolodex, and we're going to use them because they're around. So it's been a long time since I've done any session stuff. But session stuff is great. It keeps you on your toes, because you don't ever know what you're going to get, just as far as having to play different styles and different instruments, because you're being asked to do something. It's rare. It does happen that people just say, hey, I want you to do your thing, bring your stuff in and just go crazy. But a lot of times they say, listen, we have a plan here, we have a thing, we want this is the reference, we want you to kind of go for this. And oftentimes it'll be things that you are, or at least I was, unfamiliar in. And I had to bone up quickly on what that was, and it keeps you on your toes. So
could you give an example? Could you give an example of before you joined the Crows?
Joining the Crows, yeah. When I joined the Crows, I mean, I had to bone up on my Leon Russell and all that stuff. I mean, I just didn't. It wasn't really part of my repertoire. I mean, I love that music and I listened to it, but I hadn't played much. I was really from the funk scene. Played with a lot of funk people, and I was capable of that. Once the Crows thing happened, I had to think about. I wouldn't say, boogie, rock and roll boogie piano stuff, and a lot of piano.
That's right. No, I was actually, I'm looking back here. I'm not sure when you moved, or what year did you join the Crows in, like 07? So like I was just asking about like a studio session pre-Crows where you were asked to do something where you had to bone up on something, and work with cats that you were.
There was some stuff that they wanted, sort of neoclassical things, which I was not good at. And there was even one terrible session I remember doing where there was a bit that I kind of came up with that was classically, but the track was fast and I actually couldn't do it. And I remember the engineer going, "Hey, listen, we can just slow the tape down and you can just play slower." And I had to do that just to get it across, and I felt terrible about it, and I felt like I wasn't able to do what they asked. But that happens. You get in a studio setting and you don't know what you're going to get. They might ask you for something you just is not in your wheelhouse at all. And you have to fake it till you make it. And that does add something to your repertoire. Once you fall into a place where people just, if you're in bands and you're just asked to do sort of what you do, you get really good at doing what you do. And then you might get thrown into a situation where somebody says, "Well, shit, play like this." And you go, "Ooh, I haven't even tried to think about that for, 5, 6 years." And so there's a trade-off. You lose a bit of being on your toes from being in a band, but then again, you get to develop your own style. And if you're lucky, you get to a point where people just want what you do, and that's a great place to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I've interviewed. I mean, it's amazing to hear this. I'm just curious about because Gene Page, who was Barry White's musical director, he would come in with there'd be Ed Green, Wilton Felder, and David T. Walker, and he'd just put up some chord changes, very basic, and then allow them to, and then maybe he'd tell Ed Green, this is the kind of feel that I want from the drums. But other than that, it was up to the creative expression of the musicians. They had gone past the point of faking it till you make it. But do you feel like you developed, how did you develop your own individual sound? Did it come from the bandstand playing the funk scene in New York, or would you say that it was kind of, the studio stuff that when you had to go in and sort of, I don't know, sort of just play off the top, and you didn't have a lot of time to think about it, but you had to do something about it.
It's both, but I found my sound from listening to bands like the Headhunters and P-Funk, and a lot of the Electric Mile stuff, kind of that, I really found that stuff really spoke to me. And at the time, I tried to figure out what those keyboards were, and people weren't really playing the Fender Rhodes or the clavinet much because they were big and heavy. Everyone was on the DX7 and keyboards you could tuck under your arm and bring to the gig and stuff. So they were really cheap, the old gear. I could buy a Fender Rhodes for $50.
What year was this? I mean that's
probably 90.
Yeah, I dig.
90. Yeah. It was that stuff kind of lost favor in the early 80s to much more synthesizer heavy things and things that could fake some of the sounds from keyboards that were just too heavy to carry around. And nobody wanted that stuff. And I could go to shops in New York, pawn shops or music shops, and there would just be 10 or 20 Fender Rhodes just stacked in the back.
That
and
is
I'd be like,
awesome.
Please buy it. I mean, whatever you want for it, just get it out of here. So I was finding Fender Rhodes in the garbage. I found a B3 in the trash in New York on the street, like just the guts of one. Brought it home and got schematics and thought I was going to rebuild it, and then realized this was a crazy idea. But those instruments spoke to me, and they're what I started playing on when I was gigging in my teens, the Fender Rhodes, clavinets, organ, synths, like Mini Moog synth, and I still play that stuff. I've had a period of time where I played other things, but I've sort of gravitated back to the stuff that I originally came up on. So,
I mean, I got to ask you, because the Cats, when the Fender Rhodes was prevalent, and it's by far my favorite instrument. The sound is just ridiculous, and you know, there'd be Cats like they'd have to like sling it over their back, throw it in a cab, get to the gig, and then by the time they got paid their $5 or $10, and then they go back home. I mean, it was just such a schlep. I mean, can you talk about how you transported those things around, and you know, early on, and like you know, within the city, and you know, after a while, did you start to say like, man, this is heavy. This is like a heavy traffic here.
You know, it never broke my back. It never annoyed me. But yes, for gigging, there was van services in New York, like a man with a van. They'd pick you up at your rehearsal studio, and you plop the gear in the van. They drop you off at the gig, and you tell them what time you were done. They come pick you up and bring you back to your space.
Oh, wow.
The gear out. But I also played in the subways and on the street a little bit, just kind of for fun to see if I could do it.
Oh, my.
And I did that with the Rhodes too. So I had a hand cart and the Fender Rhodes and one of those battery-powered amps, and I would drag it on the subway down to like West 4th Street in New York, and pull it out and wait till some good Samaritan would help me carry it up the stairs, and I'd set up on the street and play for change and stuff, just busking.
I love it.
You
were busking.
Making stuff up.
Did you have like some kind of like, you know, knowing you probably had like one of those like early Sly Stone drum machines? Did you have like a rhythm section with you when you were busking, or was it just straight piano?
No, I didn't. I just played. I just sat on the street and just played as if I was sitting at home messing around. Not songs or anything. Just trying to play. Just find a theme and roll with it and improvise a little bit over the top of it, or just be weird and spacey, whatever it was. I got cool stuff. I got people would lower me down food from their fire escapes. I got a bagel on a string. I got a beer on a string.
Dude, my grandparents, I was probably in 9th grade or 10th grade, and that was Lower West, that was, you know, NYU, West 4th. I would probably pass you a few times going to the comic book shop or something. That's unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah, I would do it right a little bit east of 6th Avenue on West 4th. It was, you know, so did a bunch there. I did some in the subways. It's fun. It was cool. I just wanted to do it. We used to.
What did you learn the most? You know, you talked before about this idea of being a quote unquote jazzer, and it's like, I mean, I'm not a musician, so I'm not going to sit here and. You know, and you're more, you have more in the funk bag. But the truth is, the word funk was not even in the musical lexicon for a long time. I mean, they'd say Mike Clark, who was
a bad word.
Well, they would. Oh no, you know, it was like Mike Clark would say, you know, from the Headhunters. In the late '60s, they'd say, you know, let's play a funky blues. You know, let's play. It was like, you know, let's play something funky, but there wasn't like a term for funk. And I'm just like, what you talk about mashing music together, and I think this is fascinating because I don't know what like in your mind what is a true jazzer, and you know, and how do you feel about labels in general? I mean, I just feel that so much of what, I mean. Maybe you need to know the whole American songbook, or maybe you need to have a huge facility, or maybe you need to, I don't know what it is to be a jazzer, but it's like when I see you guys play on stage, I mean, I'm not like, yeah, Neil's not Kenny Burrell, you know, Horn's not playing like, you know, upright Jimmy Garrison. You're not, you know, playing necessarily Bud Powell, but it's like, it's dance music. There are great changes in it. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, in your mind, how did you, quote unquote, fall short from being a jazzer?
Oh, just harmony. I mean, I don't know the harmony. That's all chord substitutions, things like that are that you spend years studying that stuff. I literally, once I heard Bernie Worrell, I just went, okay, you know what? I'm done with everything. I just want to do that. I want to do that, and that's it. And, you know, as far as like classical musicians, you know, most of them practice 8 hours a day, probably. I mean, if that's your job is to go play piano in concert halls, when you're not doing that, your job is to make sure that you can. And those guys practice their ass off, and I don't. Jazz guys do as well, and they study all classical. They study, you know, Debussy and all these, you know, sort of modern classical people that a lot of the jazz traditional changes kind of came from. And I don't know how he did it, because I, you know, I can hear it and go, ooh, that's amazing. I can kind of understand it. I can maybe fake playing it a little bit, but to really know the ins and outs of it and why it happens and the harmony behind it and the theory behind it and the classical theory that goes into that, you know, that you have to know in order to figure all these things out, to get to chord substitutions and the amount of different chords you can put under the same melody. I don't spend my days, you know, in a room with a piano doing that. And to me, to be a true jazz person that can really say they know their harmony like that, it's a study. It's a study of a lot of different music, not just jazz, but a study of a lot of classical music and a lot of the rules that were broken. You have to understand the rules that were broken, you know, like, because they broke a lot of rules to do stuff, but you have to know the rules to break them.
I do. That's a very well put. I mean, there are so many. Mike Knock, an incredible pianist with the Fourth Way and old school musician. I mean, he was doing stuff on the piano the way you do it. And Hal Galper, who's a teacher in New York, was like, he got really pissed off at him because he wanted him to show him what he was doing. And Mike's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I just play. I mean, that to me is like, I mean, I know what you're saying. Like, from an education point of view, you have to know the rules in order to break the rules. But, what was this LaGuardia, the School for the Arts? I mean, would you say that what was the most, was the best thing about academia meeting other cats to form bands, or is there something valuable to take away from education? Because what happens now is, I don't care if there's a homogenization of sound. I'm talking about jazz now too, like where cats are coming out of schools and they're sounding just like their teachers. And so I'm trying to figure out, I want to ask you, what was the most important thing that you took from LaGuardia Arts, and would you consider yourself basically, you know, self-taught?
Name, if you had to have a name. So I had lessons. My grandfather had a piano when he was in L.A. He's Scottish, but he lived in L.A. for a bit, and he had a piano, and it got to the point where he was osteoporosis. He was getting kind of hunched over, and he couldn't really play it, and it was kind of useless. So he sent it to my mother when I was about 5 or 6, and we had a piano, and she got me lessons. So I have been taught. I just didn't really try that hard. I wouldn't say I was self-taught. I would say I was taught by people that really had expectations, and I just kind of took what I could get out of it and did kind of the least possible so that I could get the pleasure out of playing shows and stuff. So I started playing shows quite young. So it was more about knowing enough and then just running with that. So it wouldn't be self-taught. And in LaGuardia, one of the things I really got to do, which was great, was piano is not an orchestral instrument. So if you're in the music department, you have to play in the orchestra. So I had to learn another instrument to be able to play in the orchestra. So I picked up oboe, which was amazing. Oboe's a beautiful instrument. And to read all those top line stuff and get your reading together, which I've lost most of my reading now, but I was quite good at oboe, which is a beautiful instrument, tying your own reeds and all that goes with it. It was that was really beautiful to play in orchestras. And when you play in an orchestra, if it's going well, it can be better than any band. You know, you have 30 people making noise, and if they're doing it right, it's just.
Well, you're talking about symphonic orchestra or classical-based orchestra?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe that's so cool to hear you say that, because I would never. I don't believe that. I mean, I just don't feel that way. But I mean, it's interesting to hear you say that. It's just you can really just get 10 feet off the ground. You're saying, you know, when it's really...
Absolutely. When the timpanis start going and everyone's happening, the double basses are hitting their stride and everyone's peaking. It's a huge room full of beautiful shapes and sounds, and everyone's playing their part, and you really learn how to be a part of a huge machine, as opposed to, you know, a band where there's 4 or 5 people, and when you coalesce, and it's beautiful, but, you know, times that by 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, it's incredible to be a part of something, because you know, it's not only one oboe. You know, you can be first chair, second chair. So there's a bunch, and I did pretty good. I got up pretty good, considering I didn't start playing it till I was 14. I enjoyed it a lot. I actually think about it sometimes. I think about what it would be like to actually go to a little music store and pick up a cheap oboe and see if I can still do it.
Well, I mean, you know, they might be stuffed in the back like those Fender Rhodes you were picking up. I mean,
oh no, that stuff is still strong.
Yeah, it is. You're right. No, you know, it's so good to hear you say that. But I mean, how old were you? 13 or 14 when you started playing clubs?
When I started high school.
No, when you started playing live shows, gigs.
Oh, probably about 15.
Do you think, I was going to ask, because when I saw you in Nashville at 3rd and Lindley with the CRB, you were talking about the black rock scene, and just in general, that scene. And you know, just going back to someone like Mike Clark, the drummer from the Headhunters, I mean, he was playing gigs. He was going into the bars at 8 or 10 years old. I mean, do you feel? I mean, that wouldn't be allowed today. And I'm trying to figure out if that's one of the reasons why the scene was so palpable, was that young cats, I mean, literally pre-adults, were able to play live gigs that early.
Yeah, I think it was much more relaxed. And, I mean, I was, you know, drinking beer and doing my thing in clubs when I was 16, 17 years old, and the club managers had no idea. But it was New York, and nobody cared. And it's good to do that young. It's good to see what that's like, to play in front of people and know what it really takes to. It's all about moving a room. It's all about energy. Any of the shows we do, especially with CRB and Cats, where it's especially with Cats, but whenever you're done, and you work off the audience, the energy that they give you is what you put back in, and I think that's a big thing about why session work is great. There's definitely there's a thing to it where you really want to get it right, and you have overdubs and you have chances to build sections and kind of orchestrate stuff. And I do love doing that, and I love records. But at the end of the day, the feeling you get when everyone's firing on all cylinders and it's your turn to go and everyone backs you up and you can really build something and the crowd gives you back what you put in, that's, you know, it's my most beautiful moments in life, and also I feel like my weird downfall, because at some point I'm going to be too old to be doing that.
I don't know. I mean, well, we got time on our side, and I'm having a ball here with Adam MacDougall. We have another voice. Name that voice. I think you're going to get this one, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Go ahead. They're not doing it because it's difficult, man. It's hard. It's hard to make a decision like that. And honestly, when you know Chris has kids, he's got a couple of kids, and sometimes I'll think like,
Tony,
man, he could just be out doing corporate gigs with the Crows and probably making some serious dough just for himself and his family, you know?
Right.
But instead, he's choosing a path where he's building and you know, and working on himself. You know, he's writing all the time. You know, we just made this record. And, he doesn't want to just go there and phone it in and sing Talks to Angels every night. He wants to
Right.
write new stuff and perform it for people, and he is he's inspired by that. He's inspired by that path, and we're inspired to be along for the ride and be a part of that, We're this is without a doubt one of the coolest bands I've been in ever, we really have a good time,
Yeah.
In a way it feels kind of like too good to be true that we should be out having fun, playing music, and then we get paid to do it too,
All right, you guys. That's your brother Tony Leone.
That's my Tony. That's my Tony.
That's your Tony,
Speaking
man.
of jazzers, he is a jazzer. That dude. We have. There was I forget where it was, but we played a show with CRB, and he had a buddy that he had come up with doing jazz because he really came up doing jazz.
He did.
I mean, he did. He wore the suits, had the short hair, he did the whole thing. He knows so much about that genre. He's a encyclopedia of that, and he knows all the different styles and different drummers and how they play different. Everybody, not just drummers. I mean, he can spot a horn player from a mile away, a pianist from a mile away. He's taught me so much, and he played a show after one of our shows. He just sat in with a buddy that he used to do kind of straight ahead stuff with, and the guy said, "Man, come to this bar. It's across the street from your venue. Just come sit in." And he blew our mind. Just playing straight ahead.
Wait, it was like a bebop gig, or like? Well, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and then Jeff, our bass player, because he came from that too. He's a great upright player. He sat in too. So we had our rhythm section playing with a pianist and a horn player. It was incredible. I was so proud. And those guys, Jeff and Tony, are for real. They are the most adept and knowledgeable musicians in the CRB, by far. Jeff is incredible on upright. He knows all this stuff. He just comes off as like, hey, man, it's cool, whatever. But if you really get into what he's doing and what he knows, holy crap. And Tony, too. And Tony's cymbals and how he knows how to it's a lot from the jazz world. The cymbal playing, what kind of cymbals, how to hit them, how to kiss your cymbals and keep the white noise down. And Tony's great.
Well, first of all, you're spot on because both, it's funny because Tony and Jeff, they went to the Hart School of Music at the same time, but they just were like strangers passing in the night. They didn't realize they were there at the same time.
And Jeff went to Berkeley as well.
And both those guys, Jeff Hill was playing upright jazz gigs. He was also playing the Green Mill in Chicago, playing China Doll at 5 a.m. So, those guys are just, to me, what was did you play a role in bringing in those guys? You've had a couple of different rhythm sections or bass players and stuff, but why? What was the choice to bring in guys that truly are guys that can play instead of just keeping time or they're jazzers? What was the concept behind that in this rock boogie band, the CRB?
With Tony, it was because Neil and I had been playing with Phil. We've been doing those Phil-esh things up at Terrapin.
Right.
And Tony was on the gig for a couple of those gigs, and we had a different drummer at the time, George Sluppick, who was great. But I think, things were just kind of moving in a different direction. And when Chris said, hey, man, if we had to switch drummer up, who would it be? Me and Neil both said, man, this cat Tony, we've been playing with him at shows. I had no idea about his jazz background. All I did was play Grateful Dead songs with him. And
Right.
then once we got together and started, playing together, his encyclopedic knowledge of jazz was astounding. And when I saw him play straight ahead, it was like, wow, that's, when you see somebody really just do the thing that is them.
Right.
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 I'm not putting down anything he does.
I dig, man.
I just when I saw that, I went, holy crap! I get it. Like you spent so much time. Your teams. You went to school. Like I can see, and I get it now. Like that's where you come from, and Jeff, we didn't really know either. Jeff and Neil had played together in bands before, a couple of bands. In fact, one of Neil's own bands. And Jeff just kind of came in, and he has the greatest attitude and the greatest ears. He can close his eyes and play the most beautiful melodic line. It doesn't even seem like he's trying. And then if you add on top of that he can kill an upright and knows, without talking about it ever, actually does know all the theory and stuff behind stuff. He never talks about it. Never comes off in that way. I never feel like I'm in the room with somebody who's like a school player. He just is. And so, yeah, there wasn't much. It was just how they played with us. They played with us great. You know, we've all vibed together, and that's what did it.
Do you feel like? I mean, have you? Again, we're going into the semantics here, but I mean, how have they helped you stretch out? Because you're right, they're just like humble, both humble. Like Tony lies in that jazz bag. Jeff also, like, he doesn't ever talk about it, like you said. I mean, but how have they helped you? Let's just say with the harmonic side of things, grow as a musician.
Well, Jeff certainly has, because he's just an incredible melodic player. He can take changes and play them. He can move around changes in ways that surprise me and impress me always, and change. He never does the same thing twice. That's the thing. I mean, there are parts you have to nail. There's you have to hit your spots here and there, but there's freedom in CRB to interpret your parts and interpret the song in a different way, depending on how the room feels or how you feel or what's going on. So, Jeff is incredible at that. He's always throwing stuff my way, and I love bass. I always have as much bass as I can possibly get without blowing up my speaker. So,
yeah, me too, man.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. It's like a big air mattress you can lay on. So,
but I just want to ask you though about the idea. I just want to just free associate on this. Is this word, especially as it relates to the music and the music business, or as Johnny Vodakovich says, the racket, because you guys are able to sort of, I mean, you're doing something kind of against the grain. In my mind, it's something that more bands should be doing. It was what Tony was getting at, was the idea that Chris could just be mailing it in and doing the corporate gigs, and he's not. And he just doesn't want to be complacent, and that's the word I want you to talk about in your own zeitgeist. The existential Adam MacDougall. Can you talk about how you remain on the edge and not complacent in 2019 as it relates to not just music but also the biz?
He didn't, we never played a show that he's just like, just play the song, let's do them like the record, that's it. We never did that, even to the point where some people were, not so happy about that. He always wanted to say, man, we have different people doing it now. Let's bring the voices in. Let's let the music change. The songs are the same. It's how the interpretation is, and no one is stuck to any particular interpretation. So that was a big lesson for me. Also, playing with Phil was a huge lesson for me. Playing all that Dead catalog stuff, where I would sit there. I wasn't a big Deadhead. I was a funk guy, so the Dead was something I didn't really pay attention to that much until I met Chris, and then I started paying attention more. And then when I started getting gigs with Phil, obviously I had to, because I had to learn the songs. And the idea of learning, I would learn the song, I'd learn the record.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
Right.
And then we'd get to rehearsal or the sound check, and he'd be like, no, we're going to lose all that bit, and we're going to do this.
I love it. I love it.
And we're going to completely change it up, and different things like the length of notes and stuff. He would look at a room and say, well, this is a short room, so we should try and play short notes tonight. Stuff like that I never even thought about. And he would get on the mic while we're playing and say, all right, everybody play long notes now. So there's these small rules that you adhere to, and if everybody is on the same page, he would just manage to put everybody on the same page. It didn't have to be like, you have to play it like this, or you have to do this. It was more like, here's the concept for the next 10 minutes. Here's just a small concept. I'll run with it, and everybody play in that, with that thought in mind. Very simple stuff, but I'd never thought about it like that, and that really opened my head. So between knowing that Chris could easily lay back on his laurels and play the songs like the record and everyone would be happy, no one would care, the fact that he fought to always change things up and make them new and fresh, and the fact that Phil had been doing that for another 20 years beyond Chris, just never afraid to walk into a room or a stage and just say, hey, we're not doing that, we're doing this. And everyone went, okay. And you just do it, and you follow him, and that was a big learning experience for me, and I think for Neil as well, and Tony.
Well, I mean, this is mind-blowing to me. I mean, did you, you were like learning the studio Grateful Dead, or were you listening to live tapes in terms of getting ready to play with Phil?
I always preferred to learn the studio stuff.
Interesting.
Because I think that over time, a lot of some parts of the beautiful things about the record got sort of paved over with how they were used to be done. So I would listen to both. I'd listen to the studio, and then I would listen to like further, like the latest stuff that was going on at that time, and sort of go, okay, here's where they're going, but at least I know the theme. At least I know the original thing, and I can kind of put my own spin on it and see where that goes. As far as, wouldn't play it like the record, but at least there's little bits that you can get from the record, and then you can change them, but keep that theme there, which I always had fun with.
Well, and you're a master. That's the thing. I mean, there are some people would say that jazz at a certain point became an inside joke for jazz musicians, because you lost people. A lot of the patrons couldn't figure out what tune they were playing. They'd get so far out, and they couldn't go back. But I mean, I just want to be clear about something here. You are a funk. I mean, you love funk, and Herbie, that Headhunter stuff. Herbie's playing pretty complex. He's playing some jazz. It's crossover music, but. I mean, I'm just trying to think, was there a record that preceded the Headhunters? That was 73. Harvey Mason was the drummer on that. But were there other jazz records before that had an impact on you, maybe like a couple years prior? Because there was still some intense acoustic stuff that was going on at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of blank at this point when people ask.
I know. No, I was going to throw out like George Cable's on Gary Woody Shaw records. I'm just trying to. I'm like you seem to, you claim you fall short as it relates to harmonics and jazz and stuff, and it's like, well, that Herbie stuff. I mean, it's groove music, but it's still there's jazz in there,
Oh, heavily, and I'm a huge fan of Keith Jarrett.
Yep.
Like you said, Bud Powell, stuff like that. It's a lot of the ECM catalog. I'm a huge fan of all the ECM stuff, which DeJohnette, Keith Jarrett,
Dave Holland on the Conference of the Birds is great.
Holland,
Yeah.
All that stuff is kind of where I sit now when I listen to music. Is pretty much any ECM, not classical, but what would be their jazz catalog.
I love
whatever, it. 69.
I love it.
Until now, really. So.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to have to mail you Julian Priester Marine Intrusion. Do you have that?
I do not.
Oh, I'm not sure if there's a keyboard on there, but it's pretty fucking crazy. I must say, I'm really in an ECM groove myself right now. Before
all the Abercrombie, all John Abercrombie stuff is amazing. Jan Hammer stuff. I mean, I'm a huge Jan Hammer fan. As far as I know, I don't know, for some people that's a no-no because he did the Miami Vice.
Oh, give me a break, dude. Have you ever listened to him on the Fania All-Stars? It's insane. He's playing B3. That's the most funky stuff ever. Have you heard that before?
No, what is that?
Okay, so the Fania All Stars, the FANIA, the Latin funk from the early '70s. Ray Barretto, Billy Cobham on drums. And so they peeled off from Mahavishnu. There's a bunch of Latin cats. I think Jorge Santana was in that band too, and Jan Hammer's playing B3. I'll send you a couple of the clips. They'll blow your mind, dude. The guy's the filthiest player. He also was a drummer, which you were as well.
Yeah, no, he played drums. Yes, I was. He played drums on a lot of his. There's a great Jerry Goodman record with him.
Just
like
Friends.
Children.
Just Friends. Yeah.
Yeah, he plays drums and keys, and then Jerry plays all the guitar, stringy stuff, and yeah, he's a great drummer, insane drummer. And so was his drummer in the Jan Hammer group, that Tony Smith, who also sang and stuff. So I'm a huge Jan fan. Keith, Herbie. Then all the old, Oscar Peterson, all those cats from way back when, and even Lyle Mays. I think Lyle Mays is incredible. Matheny's keyboardist. I think he kind of took the Keith Jarrett thing and kind of rolled with it. Beautiful player, and so yeah, there's that for me. It's Keith, it's Herbie, it's Bernie, it's Oscar Peterson, it's Rick Wright from Pink Floyd. I think he's incredible. Not the most, not the most proficient player of all time, but his sounds and his phrasing and his thematic parts are insane. Just the guy just had a lot of melodies in his head, and I love that. People that can, no matter how they play or whatever, they always come up with a theme or something that you can whistle, that you can hear. It's writing. It's great writing.
Just this is for like a lot of the cats. Again, we're going back to the studio scene when MacDougall would have been clearly like Michael O'Marty, and that dude, by the way, was the sickest arranger of all time, and the gospel stuff that he did in the early '70s was incredible. But even now, when you're off the road, granted you're on the road a lot, is there like, would we find MacDougall at a speakeasy some night if you just are horny to play and you want to just keep a low profile? A lot of the cats in the studios, they'd be getting good dough, so they could go to places like Dante's at night and just basically play for free. And I just think about it a lot of times, like you don't want to sit in your room and practice or play by yourself. I mean, is there a place in Southern California that you can, or maybe that would just blow the roof off of it if you gave it away, but do you go out and play ever, just sort of anonymously?
No, I don't. I wish I did. I mean, one of my favorite contemporary keyboardists is Larry Goldings.
Oh, my God, the beast, yeah.
Yeah, so, he does. There's my friend who lives here, who's an engineer, who he spends most of his time in town. He'll always call me up and say, "Where are you, man?" Because fucking Larry's playing at some little club, and it's amazing. And I'll never be in town, but the times that I've been able to see it are incredible, and it's always different. He'll do some B3 stuff, and his foot's amazing, and his left hand's amazing. He can just do B3, no bass. Just he's doing all the bass stuff himself. He does. I've seen him do things with like a melodica and a farfisa.
I love it. So I love doing that. I love when he does that. He plays with like Blake Mills, and Keltner will show up in like the back. I just think that would be. It's just something that like. Going back to your days in New York when you were playing, you're not busking. I'm not asking you to busk, but, Peter Rowan told me several times that the road can eat you alive. Do you feel that way about the road? Especially, what is the hardest thing about being relentless? You guys play more live shows than most bands do. What's the hardest thing about being on the road? And as you move forward in your own personal existence, will you be able to balance family and the road?
I hope so. I just got engaged a little while ago, so that's my girl does she travels a lot for work as well, so she understands. But we don't get to see each other very much, and sometimes when we do see each other, it's she'll come and see me on the road, and that's hotels and buses and around a lot of people and stuff. And yeah, that's hard. And I didn't really mind it at all until the last year or two when I got serious with my relationship. So it's, yeah, now there are thoughts of trying to make the most of what you can get from the road without having to do it all the time so that you're home. And I would like to write more, and I'd like to maybe record some of my own stuff finally.
I'm there for that, man. You let me know when that's going down. I can't wait to hear that.
Oh, I will. But that takes some introspection and being at home and stuff. So yeah, it's.
I mean, just speaking of in general, I mean, if you're having two daughters of my own, and the fact that you're passionate, and I'm sure your fiance or wife is as well. I tend to think that there's going to be sort of a reckoning, not a reckoning, but yeah, somewhere where it's like, maximizing the amount of time on the road to be able to be a family. Otherwise, it just kind of falls. I don't need to tell you. You see it firsthand. It'll just kind of fall apart.
Yes. So, but there's always that thing. I know that about myself. I do thrive off of live performance.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I tried the studio stuff for a while, and it's really cool and it's fun, but I don't get the same thing out of it as I do with the energy you get from a crowd in a live show. So until I can't do it anymore, I'll probably be doing that in some respect. But it is choosing your battles and seeing if you can make something where the shows are you're not just out there playing every night to whoever shows up.
Ugh.
If you can try and get it to be, so everyone can be a bit more luxurious and spend a little bit less time out there. But that being said, I do love the road. It is, I don't love the road. I love to play live shows.
Yeah, and let's be clear. You love being in a band, and that's what happens.
I do.
Yeah, and I dig that.
Yes, and I always have.
I mean, that's been true since the days of LaGuardia. But one more thing. Can you talk about the time feel? We vetted Leone pretty well here, but one cat that, is I really love to see play is Mark Levy, and he filled in for Tony in the CRB, and he also plays in Cats, and he makes it look kind of effortless, but I know it's not that.
Yeah, because he won't stop smiling. That's why.
He's just a smiling all the way home. But I mean, what can you talk a little bit about why you enjoy playing with Mark Levy?
Oh man, I love Mark. I forget what festival we were playing, but it was a festival with CRB early on, years and years ago, probably 2012 or something. And he was playing at an indoor stage on site of the festival, and I was just wandering around, and I saw him and went, okay, that guy's got something. And I got his number and didn't really talk to him for a long time. And then we did a couple things in 2013. I stayed in touch. We did some recording, actually, in Denver, because that's where he's from, with some friends of his, just some instrumental stuff, which I actually haven't heard. But that was fun.
We got to get that out. We got to hear that.
Circles around the sun, from Kreutzmann's Kid, to do the walk-in music and set break music. He said, "Do you know any drummers?" And I said, "I absolutely do." So I called Mark. I love Mark's playing. He's also very schooled. He went to college for it. He's incredible with odd times and has studied all sorts of different types of music and can do all that, the crazy counting when Indian tabla players count on their knuckles and stuff. He knows how to do all that stuff, and he's very metronomic. His time is something you can really lean on, and he's playful. He listens a lot, and if I come up with a theme or a rhythmic pattern behind one of Neil's solos, Mark is always right there with me, accenting without making a big deal out of it, without overplaying. He has a perfect balance of not overplaying and but also hitting the marks and your where other people are rhythmically doing their comping. He can really comp. He's a great drummer. He can comp, like just as a keyboardist or a guitarist. When someone else is taking a solo and you're comping behind them and just kind of hitting the rhythmical chords and trying to make it happen with the solo, he's great at that from a drum perspective, and it makes it really easy. And Dan too, the bass player in Cats, he's
well, don't even get. I mean, I could take. I mean, Dan Horn is. I mean, thunderous, Chuck Rainey-esque kind of pocket there. Are you? I mean, I know you've been on the bandstand. You've seen a lot of pretty amazing sort of, almost intergalactic kind of things. There's only two letters that separate magic and music. But where do you rate the, 3 days straight under a time crunch with, I don't think Dan and Mark ever played together before when you went in and did the Circles gig. Where does that rank in sort of your, like, lexicon of sort of intergalactic moments? The fact that it came out that well, to the point where, yeah, you guys now are a band.
Well, that was all the most serendipitous thing that's ever happened to me.
It is,
honestly, and I think to everybody else as well, because we were there for 2 days. And we had to make 5 hours of music, so it was the first day was kind of getting to know each other and running through stuff, and we recorded everything we did, but we didn't have any time to listen back to anything. Nothing.
Exactly.
We never heard anything we recorded in those 2 days because there just wasn't enough time. You can't do 5 hours of music and play 20-minute songs and go back into the control room and listen to your take. You'll be done. There's no time. So we literally played through the tunes, got to know each other, wrote the tunes on the spot pretty much, and we just asked the engineer, hey, this guy JP, who has a studio in Ventura, we asked him, was it cool? Did we get it? And he would say yes, and then we'd go on. And I didn't hear those tunes until I was at the stadium in Northern California for the first GD50 show. I had never heard the tunes.
Now, were you tapped into them? Because a lot of cats didn't realize that was actually the music that was playing before the first set of the first show. When did you actually become cognizant of it? At intermission, or did you hear it right when they played at the beginning?
Oh, at the California shows? Those
Yeah.
2 shows in, I forget what stadium that was or whatever, but
the ones in the football stadium. The one where the rainbow came out. I believe Circles. The music before the show was Circles.
Yes, it was. It was before the show, during set break. Yeah, it was for walk-in music and between sets. So I think they played it. Whoever adjusted the volume on the PA system for the walk-in music and stuff, I think they set it pretty high.
Mm.
And Neil and I were nervous because we were there together, and we were going, man, we don't know what we did. We'd never listened back to it. We were feeling a bit insecure about it.
Oh, I'm freaking out, dude.
Yeah, when you play 20 minutes, you start to regurgitate. You're throwing up in your mouth and you're swallowing it. You're throwing up in your mouth and you're swallowing it. That's what you're doing for 20 minutes because you run out of ideas. I mean, amazing players won't. Schofield and all those cats, they won't.
Right.
They'll be able to keep going. For 20 minutes of stuff, we kept shit. We'd lean back on stuff and go, God damn it, we've done this before, but we're just trying to fill space because we've been asked to make long pieces that are okay, well, I hope they have what they need, and we'll probably never hear this again. And when we got to the stadium, it was kind of loud. And I remember Neil and I looking at each other and going, holy shit. And then we looked around, and there were a lot of people there. It was 70 grand or something.
Oh, yeah.
60 grand. And they were all dancing. And we went, uh-oh. Okay. It's because we honestly were hoping that it would be low volume and nobody would notice. That was the point, because we had been asked to make music that no one would really pay attention to, that they could buy beer to, buy a T-shirt to, and not really think about it, So it was a bit loud, and it was working, and people were kind of paying attention. And then the live stream was happening, too, so people at home were hearing it, and we just didn't realize how big a deal it was at any moment up until when we actually were there. So
Absolutely magic. I mean, yeah, Justin Kreutzmann, always the trickster. I'm sure he had that stuff turned up way loud, wanting to turn you guys into a full-on touring act, and I'm sure glad he did because, to be honest with you, man, in these times we live in, and sort of the way I'm channeling my existence, music is absolutely a healing force, especially the kind of music you guys play in Cats, and I really can't thank you enough. It's been a long time coming. I really enjoyed the hang, and look forward to seeing you this year and doing some more.
Yeah, we're gonna try and every hole we get with CRB, we're gonna try and stuff a cat in there. So
stuff a cat and stuff a cat and come down to the old Pueblo here in Tucson, dude. We'd love to hang, man.
Yeah, we might. We'll see, but we might be doing that neck of the woods in a couple months. But yeah, it's the most serendipitous thing. We went from, sitting in a room just kind of jamming to getting a record deal, which never happens.
Nope.
And being able to put out 2 records, which is great. And the chance of I think we'll be able to put out a 3rd and hopefully more, and do some shows. And the shows have been really epic, and the response has been great. So it's a lot of fun. It's healing for me too. This music, both CRB and Cats, but especially Cats, because it's just so. It's almost jazzy in that sense of you play a head and then you're just set free until you come back to the head, and that can be, as long as we want it to be. So it's healing. It's cathartic and healing for me as well.
Much love to you, Adam. I'll get you a copy of this. I'm also going to send you that Jan Hammer stuff with the Fania All-Stars. It's going to blow your mind.
Cool. Yeah, I wrote that down. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, much love to you, man, and I'll be seeing you along the way. I look forward. Thanks for healing me, man.
I'll see you soon, right?
All right, dude.
All right.
Later, dude. Bye-bye.
Later. Bye.
Epic hang with keyboardist Adam MacDougall, and we're in a bit of a time crunch, but going to come back with a legendary drummer, Mark Levy, on the Jake Feinberg Show right after this.